sometimes people confuse being confrontational with being inappropriate. I do not think there's anything confrontational about standing up for what's right.
When I think of one word that describes you, Paul, it's automatically, I think, servant leadership. Like if there was the definition of servant leadership, if I were to show someone what that looks like in action, that is you.
Well,
and I truly mean that.
You are so kind to say that.
Well, it's truth. It's more than kind. It's truth. And so I want you to explain a little bit to me, when I think of the first question I wanted to ask you is, tell me about your leadership style and what parts of your journey as an attorney, even as a father, as a husband, developed you into the leader you are today.
So there's a lot to unpack there. And I would certainly say that professionally, I definitely think my leadership style remains a work in progress. No question. Mm-hmm. Which is okay. Because there's always ways to get better. I would say that to answer it personally, I think I get as a human and as a father, which is as I know is my most important job, husband and father, husband, and son, is I get a lot of that from my parents. My mom, who I just talked to on the way here, and this morning, has never met a stranger and never met a person she wouldn't care for. She is almost 88 and a nurse, and always had, and everyone born to be a nurse, it was my mom. Mm-hmm. And she just has that fundamental decency where she's kind, but you'd never want to cross her. So I love that, and her fierce loyalty to her family. And then my late dad, what I really think from there is he wasn't real big on all the things we call leadership now. He was just excellent. And he was someone who was so dedicated to my mom. He was so dedicated to my brothers and me. He was so dedicated to his profession. He was a surgeon that was it. Those were the things. It was his family and his profession. And sometimes at the exclusion of having a million friends, although he had good friends, sometimes the exclusion of a lot of other things, but boy, he was laser focused on those things and his priorities were laser sharp. They just weren't maybe as diverse of interests because he was so focused on his family and his excellence. But when he retired, he really opened up his views and just became a voracious reader and thought about a lot of things differently. So I definitely think I get, to the extent I have a drive and a work ethic, which I think is an important part of leadership because you have to show that, ever expect others to want to work hard. You have to do it yourself. I get that from my dad. Mm-hmm. I hope I have half of his integrity and all that. Mm-hmm. And I definitely think I get the fact that I get energy from being around people, which I definitely do. I get that from my mom. And as it translates to, leadership of my family, I just, I do the same thing you do. I just love them unconditionally, which doesn't mean it's always easy. It doesn't mean you give them everything they want for kids, but they know that you're home base and you're a safe place. That's kind of my view from when they were little boys to now when they're young men, college age, and with a fourth grade little girl, same thing. In some respects, although as you know, those girls are a little smarter than those boys.
Oh yes.
and then if I look at it professionally, I think I lead through enthusiasm in a lot of ways. And I think most of the time that's really good. There's some pitfalls. Sometimes I could be too enthusiastic, I think. But I lead through, I think everyone knows I'm really loyal to them and I have everyone's back. And I think that means that they then overlook sometimes when, it's a tense job. It's a high stakes job and it's a high pressure job. Mm-hmm. And I think my leadership style, to the extent I have one, is to be rather direct. And I actually think sometimes being direct is the kindest thing. Sometimes the recipient of it may not feel it's very kind, but I think the people that have been honest and direct with me, even when it's not the easiest thing to communicate, I think that's far kinder than glossing over it and allowing something to fester or get worse, have a negative consequence down the line. So I think people would say, and I think I would say, really, really loyal, really high standards. I don't think I expect anything of anyone that I wouldn't expect of myself. I have really no issue with people making mistakes, because we all make mistakes. It's what do you do in response? And do you make it so you're not making the same one over and over again? But I want people to have courage to try and push themselves and be someone that other people want to be around in terms of helping them raise their game professionally. I mean, one example is there's nothing I get more of a charge out of professionally than take young lawyers to trial and let them do things for the first time. That's the most fun. And that's happened a lot recently.
Do you know what? That was my next question. There was a gentleman by the name of Herman Bowles, who I had as a guest. He is global real estate, U.S. for Jones Lang LaSalle, amazing legacy, right? Graduate from West Point, and pretty much one of his passion is really fostering the next generation, mentoring as well as sponsoring them, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I was sitting here as you were talking, and I thought to myself, I bet that is one of your passions within your profession.
It so is, as on a pay it forward level, Lisa, because I was so lucky with the opportunities I got when I was a young lawyer. And sometimes you do create your own luck, and sometimes you have to ask someone to be your mentor, or more importantly, use the better word, which is sponsor. We have sometimes too much talk about mentorship and not enough sponsorship.
Yes. Yes.
And I love sometimes, supporting people. If I could support people sometimes behind their backs without them knowing, and putting them in positions and that they've earned, but they don't realize they've earned it. And it's a lot of fun. It's scary for them, but I also remember how scared I was when people gave me opportunities too.
Yes.
And if you don't worry about it, if it doesn't give you that hit in your stomach, then you're probably not going to care enough to do well.
That's true. That's true. One other thing he talked about, which I'll mention to you, is he talked about the whole, there's this whole saying called a pet to threat. Don't know if you've heard of that, but basically, when he first started out, he was everyone's pet, meaning he was non-threatening. Everyone wanted to help. All the upper level management executives wanted to help him climb the ladder. But then as he grew and he developed, under some leadership, he became a threat, because they saw that possibly he could be surpassed. He could surpass them, right? Within the organizational structure, right? And so we talked about how authentic leaders who don't compromise is that they actually celebrate the person that they have mentored or sponsored when that person maybe has surpassed them in the organization, because that means they did well in what they did and they got them to where they're supposed to be. And so we talked about this whole pet to threat analogy, and just how good leaders do not compromise what they do for others, and they certainly do not allow anyone to become a threat, because they realize that they have done what they're supposed to do if that person is even more successful than or has moved further along in the organization than where they are. So
it's really interesting you say that, Lisa, because as you say it, I didn't know what pet to threat meant until you described it, but boy, I have lived and experienced both ends of the spectrum on that one.
I assume that you did. Yes.
I have had someone that I thought was a mentor, and they were a mentor until I got to a certain level, and then they were, look, let's just be honest, threatened, and people that are threatened, they do the worst thing you can do in any business or any organization. Otherwise, they become backstabbers, and subtly and in a conniving way. And I experienced it once, about 20 years ago, and it really caused me to question myself. Because I'm sensitive about stuff, and I care, and I do care. You always say, don't worry about what do people think. Well, that's easier said than done. And it's certainly when it's someone that was your mentor and you start to see it. And it wasn't until I really saw some incredible leaders of mine who were peers of that person. And I had been in a former firm with both of them. And some people took me to lunch and said, it's not you. We know what he's doing. And then someone at my firm at the time, who I really respected, said, we all know what he's doing and it's not okay. And I said, okay. And they said, does he need to go? They asked me, does he need to go? And I said, whoa, I'm not interested in that. I would just like it to stop, because it's not helping us. It's not help. It's a bad look. I thought that was incredible when they actually, I felt what a validation or a vote of confidence that people noticed it not because I was complaining about it, because frankly, I was sensitive. I thought maybe I'd done something. And then I really realized the beautiful part of it, which is the people that would push me out and say, look at this guy. He's lapped us, or and his success is our success. So from that, what I do talk about is with a team, I hate the word boss. I don't like it when people call me their boss. And people on my teams know that. So of course, because they know I don't like it, what do you think they refer to me as? They refer to me as their boss because that's their way of needling me. But I don't like the term because I think we're a team, but I also really like to talk in terms of shared successes. We win a trial, or we win a case, or we win a huge motion. We win as a team. And if we don't reach that goal, then that's as a team. And I just think that, like any team, you can't do it without the whole team. And I think everyone should get to celebrate it.
Well, there's another leadership that I really like that goes along with servant leadership. It always seems to go hand in hand. It's collaborative leadership. And that's what you're talking about. It's the whole team kind of focus. And what that does, that empowers your team. It empowers them for even the next time that they go to trial, right? And they start developing. So that makes sense to me that you would be very collaborative in that standpoint.
I try to be real intentional because at the end of the day, I tell everyone, look, as much as I want to be patient all the time, let's be real honest. It's a high pressure thing. I get impatient or I get stressed when I'm pulled in too many different directions. Okay? I know that. So would I like in every situation to react more patiently? Of course I would. Do I think that's going to happen during the remaining however many years of my active business career? Probably not. Okay. I'm probably more patient than I was. I'm probably not going to get where I want to be. So what I really try to do when I am impatient is either real time or when the call's over is call the person to whom I was impatient and say, look, that's just me. We're good. And I didn't mean to snap at you on that. I'm just got too many things going on. And I want you to know that, because it doesn't make it really okay.
Right.
It doesn't make it as good as if I didn't do it in the first place, but it's a whole lot better than not saying something. And I do think people appreciate that, and that I'm aware of it, and that they know it's not them. The last thing I ever want to do is call someone out or make them feel self-conscious or whatever. And I really do try to do that, because at the end of the day, I was actually had a conversation with an opposing lawyer yesterday, and I was trying to convince him of something. And I said, I'm just going to tell you, because we don't know each other directly, but we know a lot of people in common. And one thing I will tell you is, I said, is my word is good. Whatever I tell you is good. He said, I know that. And what I would also say here is, people can say whatever, but they're not going to say I'm unfair. They're just not going to say I'm unfair. They may say I'm abrupt. They may say that, but boy, at the end of the day, they're not going to say that they weren't fairly treated. And, I think that allows me to have some more candid conversations with people, because at the end of the day, the reason people don't get where they want to get, in a lot of times, whether it's real estate or law or business, is people aren't honest with them as they're progressing about not their flaws, but their areas where they can get better. Absolutely. And I think that they rock along and they don't have any feedback.
The opportunities, right? There's always an opportunity, right? To develop, get better, whatever it is. And you do have to be honest. If you're not honest, there's no development that's going to have to take place.
Yep. And the flip side, I will say to team members, most of whom are significantly junior to me in years of experience, but I don't think they're junior to me in terms of intelligence by any means. I'll say, what do we need to do better? What did I miss there? And I said, guys, I am not looking for everyone to give me blank stares. Like, what did I miss? Tell me, please. And then if they start firing ideas, say, no, we're good there, we're good there, we're good there. I had this happen the other day. I was like, just because I'm shooting them down, do not stop firing away. The fact that you're raising things is what I need, because it helps me know what's on your mind, and we're a team. And it's not as if I'm going to miss something, we're going to miss something. It's not as if you're going to miss something, we're going to miss something. So we got to do it, we got to do it together and kind of get that collective responsibility. The collaboration is the key word. And look, law is a competitive business. It's certainly litigation is a competitive zero sum. Most of the time there's a winner and there's someone who finishes second, and we really don't want to be the person finishing second. So in that, you want to be, and you're ambitious. The ambition is to win correctly, ethically, in the right way, but you got to do it by bringing people on your team. Otherwise, I'm on an island, and I'm not gonna do very well by myself. So
I would agree. I would agree. Well, this leads to my next question. when you talk about litigation, let's talk a little bit about your career. So, in your extensive career handling complex litigation across, I'm assuming, various industries, Paul,
Yep.
have you ever faced situations where your ideals or values were challenged? And how did you navigate these ethical dilemmas?
Great question. So, when I started out, the first firm I worked at was from Strasburg and Price, which was an old line firm founded in the late 30s, Dallas-based. It's now in existence as part of a different law firm. But
I remember them well. They were a client of Lawrence's back in
Yep.
the early days.
They
Yes.
and they had a great real estate practice. And
Yes, they did.
Yes,
Yes,
they did.
Right.
And I was lucky enough to work with probably 4 or 5 senior lawyers there who are members of the American College of Trial Lawyers, which is the highest recognition. And they were amazing and mentors. And one of them, who was a great professional mentor, but not really a great personal mentor. I didn't think he really had his family correctly prioritized, but boy, in terms of being an amazing lawyer, he was amazing. And luckily, I wasn't looking for someone to help me with personal priorities in terms of family, but he was great in terms of prioritizing how to be great at my job. And he said, there will come a time where you're going to have to tell a client that your bar card, your license is more important to you than their case. And that stuck with me.
Bingo. Yes.
And I agree with that. I've never had to tell someone it per se. I've used the example sometimes when I feel like it might be necessary to kind of lay it out there, just let everyone know what the ground rules are. I think that, look, I've had some really, I've been in some tense situations where lawyers have definitely tried to goad me or provoke that, whether it's in front of court or in front of a jury or otherwise. And I have really, really always tried to just ignore that, let that go away. The thing, when people have questioned, what the most ironic thing, Lisa, is the times people have gotten most angry with me and questioned my integrity is when they've been caught doing something improper.
In their own integrity, right.
In their own integrity, and they turn around. I had this happen in February. Someone violated a court order 3 times in trial, 3 times within one day. Thursday afternoon, twice, Friday morning in front of a jury, all 3 times. The judge got really mad and threatened to punish them for that. And looked at me and said, "What do you think?" I said, "I can't believe it happened." Yes. And asked me if we wanted a mistrial, which means do it all over again. I said, "I have to talk to the client. I don't know. Can I think about it? But it's really not good." And the judge left and said she's going to think about it. And the lawyer turned around in court. Judge wasn't there and said, "I can't believe you're doing this to me." And walked towards me. It's someone I've known for a long time. And I said, "You need to lower your voice and you need to take 2 steps back." I didn't think he was going to slug me or anything, but I'm like, lower your voice and take 2 steps back. And he goes, "How could you do this to me?" And I repeated that, lower your voice and take 2 steps back. I said, "I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. You did." I said, "So it's not on me, it's on you." And the client, his client was in the courtroom, my client was in the courtroom, the bailiff was in the courtroom, court reporter was in the courtroom. And then I said, "So sorry, this is not on me, it's on you." And I thought, wow, how could you get mad at me for something you did? And so that was one. I just think I had something. People are so quick to accuse, and people think if you made a mistake that you're evil or you had ill intent. So I think there's a huge difference between if you make a mistake, if you misspeak, then you say, "I think you made a mistake there. Do you want to correct yourself?" As opposed to, "I cannot believe you misrepresented that," which means you lied. Just a fancy way of saying you lied.
Right.
And I just think people are so quick to that. And I just tell people, you know what? You may not know me, but I make mistakes, but do not ever tell me I'm trying to deceive someone. Because that won't happen. And I just think I just think there's a zero tolerance for that. I have a zero tolerance for it. I don't put up with it with others. And I don't put up with it with myself. If I'm not sure about something, I'm clear. I will, well, I will be candid with the judge on all times. I'll tell judges things that may cut against our position because that's my oath. And I've had clients that have in the past go, why did you do that? I said, well, first of all, the judge asked. You got to give an honest answer. Second of all, it's a long game. Life is a long game.
Yes.
This case is a long game. As my dad told me that his father, my grandfather told him, who was a self-made, uneducated, but very self-made, not formally educated, I should say. He was educated, not formally educated, immigrant, businessman, told my dad, two things my dad always said is, everyone has a job. Okay, that's self-explanatory. And you have one last name. I'll paraphrase, don't mess it up.
Oh,
and, and Lisa, I just really believe in that. And so I have had clients question why I have been so forthright, or why I have even volunteered something that may not be good for us in the moment. And I said, because at the end of the day, if we're not credible in this court, we're going to be in bad shape. And sometimes the best way to build credibility is let the judge know what your weaknesses are and let them know, where you're at and let them know, you know what, the reason we're not asking for that is we're not entitled to that, Your Honor, but we do think we're entitled to this. And it's amazing. It's like any kind of business. I mean, who are you going to trust, right?
Right.
So I don't know. That's a very
that was a great answer. So many nuggets to that. Let me ask you on the flip side, what about those who don't understand the importance of admitting when they're wrong? That's one piece.
Yep.
What about those who don't understand why the accusatory communication is more harm than good? And thirdly, I'm going to even flip it more, is what about those that don't understand, when you have to be assertive and firm and stand up in the courtroom and call someone out? That was an example. What about those who don't have the confidence to even flip it? I always like to say there's nowhere in, the faith that I serve that you're supposed to be nice. Nice is not in that. Kind is one thing, but not nice, because there's a boldness and there's a firmness that you do need at times. And what about those who don't feel comfortable with that boldness or that firmness to stand up and to change the trajectory? Those we call it in corporate America change agents, right? But yes.
Yeah, because if you don't stand up, whether it's in a courtroom to call someone out, you have first of all, you have an obligation to yourself. I think I have and forget the law license stuff, which is obviously important, but I do have an ethical obligation to my client, but I also have an ethical obligation to the court, which is bigger than me, to be honest and call someone out and bring to the court's attention if someone's not being straight. If someone's unwilling to do that, then I think that in and of itself questions their integrity a little bit, because you have to stand up for something that is what's right, whether it's the winning position or the losing position. I do agree with you that just being nice, going along to get along, can lead you to a lot of problems. I mean, look, there's someone we both know who leads the school where your son is and my son went, who has a great line. He told me once, don't confuse kindness with weakness.
So true.
And you know who I'm talking about, and it completely applies to him.
Yes.
100%.
Oh,
1,000%.
Absolutely.
Super kind, super strong.
Super kind, but do not mistake it for weakness.
Yes. And I think that people need to be not taught, but sometimes in this generation, people, the younger generation coming into the profession now, particularly after going through a period of a couple of years where they really didn't develop in a fair way because of the pandemic.
Yes.
They didn't get a lot of the interpersonal dealings skills that were so important when you're 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, those ages. They have to be not told, but shown what it means to stand up for something and to say, you know what, I had this week with two young lawyers that hadn't been in a deposition, and the opposing lawyer was really being, he wasn't following the rules. He was trying to interfere. He was interrupting and all that. And they said, well, that kind of stopped, didn't it? I said, well, what do you think made it stop? They said, well, at some point you just said, you can't say those things. You need to follow the rules and you're not going to put up with it. I said, exactly. I'm not going to put up with it. I said, the next thing I was going to say? I said, what? I said, the next thing I was going to say, do you want to take a break and we'll call the judge and see what he thinks? They said, you would have done that? I said, absolutely, I would have done it. because at the end of the day, that's what we're going to do. And I said, but the part that is really frustrating with that is he has a client there who's giving testimony as a senior corporate officer for their major company who is nervous, visibly nervous, handshaking, eyes blinking, nervous. I don't take joy in that, okay? I actually believe this person was nervous because of the situation. Now, I don't think her lawyer was making her any less nervous, probably more nervous, but I was just trying to get the information from her. And I think through the end of the day, she realized I was just doing my job because I was being intentionally extra respectful, almost deferential to her, to get her just to tell me what the deal was, what A or B, whatever it is, I just need to know. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes people confuse being confrontational with being inappropriate. I do not think there's anything confrontational about standing up for what's right. So I told you about my sweet mom, who I think you've met, and she's really sweet, but she's not so sweet when you mistreat one of her family members. She that is not a place anyone wants to go. And that never bothered me. That just taught me, you know what? Life's good, but do not ever unfairly treat one of my kids. It will not be a good situation. And I think you can reconcile all those things in business and in life. I really do think that.
Mm-hmm. I can't agree with you more. I probably have a similar personality to your mom as well. I can very kind but I come from a lineage that you cross one of the loved ones, cross our family, that kind of thing. I'm going to stand up. You have to be firm, bold.
Yep.
I'm hoping that I've taught my children the same thing.
No doubt
like
you
said
have.
earlier, one thing that you said earlier that really resonated with me, I am just not the one to treat someone unfairly, unjustly. You want everyone to have the opportunity that they're supposed to have and not cheat them out of anything. No hidden agendas when it comes to, your leadership, as well as, how that I hope that I've led and that I'm leading. So that's so good. This is so good. Let me ask you this question. So as a leader at Paul Hastings and being a very successful trial litigation attorney, have you observed instances where colleagues or clients had to compromise their principles for success? And then how did you handle or advise on those situations?
Yep. Colleagues not at Paul Hastings, I've seen him, September 12th, Lisa, is 30 years since I started my first day of law practice. I've seen a few colleagues try to do some crooked things, but usually that involves jockeying. And that's just...
So go a little bit further on the jockeying. Give our listeners an example of that.
Just not being collaborative, trying to take credit for things that aren't theirs, or try to...
Same thing in the legal field. Okay.
Yes. Right. Climb by stepping on someone else instead of stepping on an opportunity. Yes, that sort of thing. I've seen some of that. What I do see with clients, and I've been really, really lucky and fortunate, and I hope I create some of my own luck in this regard, is having had wonderful clients with great ethical compasses. The pitfall I always have is when a client says, I want them, because I always start out, what does a win look like? Tell me what a win looks like. Let's work backwards from that. Because usually a win is not a trial. They want to go spend 6 weeks in trial and have all that. No, if they want this result, okay? But sometimes someone will say, I want them to go to jail. And I said, well, let's just level set here. One thing we cannot do, and I will not do, is we're not going to threaten that, because that's unethical. I'm not allowed to do that in a civil case. I can't use any threat of anything criminal to gain an advantage in a civil case. I just can't do that. That's off the table, etc. So I'm not questioning you for wanting that. There's no point in ever talking about that again. And some really, really, really successful business people who have great ethical compasses don't know that until I tell them that in those certain terms. So it's amazing to me that they have either never had any interface with lawyers have never told them that, or whatever, because it's always surprising to me that that's news to them. But I also think that things like that, when you tell someone that becomes an opportunity to really forge your relationship with that person, because they're going to go, you know what? he's going to tell me what I need to know, not what I want to know. There have been a couple of clients that I haven't trusted. And there have been a few people at great clients that I really thought were just not good eggs at all. And, one time it was a situation where someone was just really verbally abusive to me, to my team. And we were working really hard and just really ugly and awful. And I did not really respond. I kind of shut down because a response would have been counterproductive in that moment. I had a senior partner who I used to work with who actually retired a couple of years ago. And I actually just spoke with him last week. He lives in Miami, and he saw it all. And I said, what do you think? He goes, you're unbelievable. I said, what do you mean? I said, he said some pretty awful things about it. He goes, yeah, but you didn't take the bait. It's all ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It wasn't the place to fight the client in front of all these associates. You just, you shut down, you made your point and all that. And you sit there and guess what? 6 months later, that guy was fired. Whether it was because of what he did with me, probably not. But that's just emblematic of who he is. So I just sit there.
You know that he's doing it within his own
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And everyone's bad behavior arises out of their insecurity that they cannot control. Because we're all insecure, but most of us try to control it and not let it show itself in really ugly behavior or unethical behavior.
Or influence the decisions of ourselves or others.
Yes.
We try to, like you said, control it. Absolutely.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So I think I've seen instances of it, but not a ton. I just got to tell you, I think whether it's jurors, whether it's judges, whether it's opposing counsel or clients, I think people generally have a decency about them. I really do believe that. I assume that until they give me a reason to believe otherwise. Yeah.
I think that's what we're supposed to do, right?
I think so.
I think so too. I think so too. Yeah. Until you give me a reason, I'm just going to believe the best. And I will give you the benefit of the doubt if a mistake was made. I'm going to really consider it a mistake unless we see a repeat. I mean, it has to be a pattern, right? So.
Yes. And look, some people just want to fight. Some people just want to fight. Yesterday, within one day, I had a lawyer that I was speaking with on a matter where he had a colleague who wrote a really nasty letter to me, very accusatory. I got it while I was on vacation in June, and it was completely unnecessary. It could have been a phone call. It could have been a 2-line email. It was a 6-page letter with all this. It was wrong, and it made me really angry and all that. Well, fast forward 2 months, and I just called him, and I said, can we just have a phone call? He wasn't the one that wrote the letter, but it was on his side. Can we just have a phone call? I said, I don't know you, but we have some really good friends in common, and they speak really highly of you. He said, I appreciate that. I said, you don't know me, but I'm just going to tell you, my word is good. He goes, I know that. I said, and I just kind of said, just listen to me. I don't have X. I promise you I don't. And he said, okay. I said, this should not be an issue. We just talked one-on-one. I said, we don't need to be on a Zoom screen with 8 people, 4 on your side, 4 on my side, where it all becomes, a contest and it becomes like a sporting event and everyone's trying. I said, let's just have a conversation and get through it. And it was really productive. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then separate matter, same day, someone literally was hell-bent on filing a motion to seek sanctions against my client and us for filing something because they think it was false. They think we said something false, which we did. And we went back and forth, and they just were hell-bent on filing it. Right. And, you can't control it.
You can't.
You can tell them, you can try. And they would say, can we just get on the phone and talk about it?
Right.
They said, we will talk with you about it only if you withdraw what you filed. I said, well, that's not really talking about it. That's kind of like you win. What is it? What's the phrase, Lisa? Heads you win, tails I lose. Something
tails
like that. But at some point, some people just want to fight.
Mm-hmm. They do.
So.
They do. And I think that is another. That's probably that brings out a different style that you must have, right? In handling those kinds. So.
But it's interesting because people do say, well, gee, you're a litigator, you're a trial lawyer, you're in the dispute. And I am in the dispute business, but I also think I'm in the dispute resolution business. Mm-hmm. Don't you just, there's no way these things could actually upset you, could affect you. Mm-hmm. And I think about it, I'm like, the moment they don't affect me, I'm going to retire or I'll find something else to do because it means I don't care enough. Mm-hmm. It'd be like my mom went to the went to her cardiologist yesterday, and she said he, barely talked to her. And when he was done, he looked at her and said, "You can go now."
Mm.
And I said, "That's ridiculous." And he treated her like a number. And I said, I said, "Mom, I want the next appointment. I'm taking you to the next appointment, and we'll see we'll see if he treats you like a number then."
Yeah, we'll see if we can have a little more conversation at that point.
Exactly.
But, that reminds me too of, always in our business, it's about the next deal, right? And I think one reason why we opened up our company, over 16 years ago, is because we didn't want it to be about the next deal, but we wanted to care about the complete complexity of what surrounded the deal. So whatever is on the plate of the client that had nothing to do with real estate, we wanted to care about that too, right?
That's the strategies part, right?
That's the strategies piece. And I think it has to be, because what happens is there's a better answer, a better solvency that comes about for the very thing that you are supposed to be the expert in, if you understand the complete wholeness of that person. And sometimes it's even crossing over personally with them too.
Yep.
Right?
Well, I think at the end of the day, if people care, whether it's a client or otherwise, if they know you care, and you have to care, if they know that, then everything's going to work out. I mean, I just think life and business sometimes is like a mutual fund. Do the right thing, and the right things will happen. I mean, but I think when people start to get transactional about things that really should be relational, then you lose.
There you go.
Right? And I know how you think about it. I know how Lawrence thinks about it. It's the same. It's exactly the same way. I know.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because at the end of the day, there is a reason that that Wendy and I became so close with you and Lawrence so quickly. And some of it's situational, but a lot of it is just shared values, isn't it?
It is. It was so relational, relational, and it took no effort. It was very natural.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
It just was. It just is. Right.
Yep.
I would agree. I couldn't agree more. So here's another question that I think that we can figure out how we want to go here, but balancing the demands of high stakes litigation with maintaining ethical standards. You and I've already talked about how that sometimes can be challenging, right? But have there been any moments in your career where you even had to make a difficult decision to uphold your integrity, which you've touched on a few of these things, even if it meant a potential setback for a case or a client?
I have definitely turned down work that I knew would cause me to, if I know on the front end that I'm going to have to fire this client or withdraw, if I know that at the beginning, then I'm not going there. And so I've definitely done that. I have had to tell partners of my prior firm, that we're in a different state, that we're not doing this. And 3 months later, when I send them a Wall Street Journal article about that client, I said, "This is why we were doing this." And
so good, Paul. So good. Yes.
Well, there's some of that. Some of it's self-preservation, because you don't want to be associated with that.
Right.
But still, the short term, looking for the short gain never works. I just think at the end of the day, unfortunately or not, people are going to try and test us always. And, it's a test, and personally, professionally, or a hybrid of both. And the best advice I ever got when things were tricky was a friend of mine said, "Just remember to be the person or be the man you'd want your sons to be." And I was like, "Oh man," right? Talk about that. Talk about that.
Absolutely.
And I think that, and I know the same thing with your kids who are young adults, one younger than the other. But when they see it, they see it now, they can actually really see it, which is good.
And they can understand it more right now. They
understand it more
completely. They understand it more. So, going back to being a change agent, I absolutely, it's one of my favorite questions to ask my guest is to, people that can make change or set a certain standard within an organization, which you and I have talked about this time of setting certain standards, certain boundaries, being firm in certain values, right? Within even your legal industry, right? Those people who can make change in organizations or do something to better a community, an organization, or or a person, but they choose not to. They choose not to speak up. They choose to be complacent. They choose to go with, a lot of times they say that they're just as guilty of those who are causing detriment if they choose not to, if they see there's a change that needs to be made
That's
or a
right.
standard that needs to be set.
Uh-huh.
Tell me why you think those who have the influence sometimes do not.
I think they're scared. I think they're scared. At the end of the day, that's the nicest thing I can say is they may be scared.
Mm-hmm.
The worst is that they're lazy, or that they care what people think instead of doing what's right. But like, I think about it, and I do think, then what's the notion, to whom much is given, much is expected, or mangling that, I'm sure. But you know what
I know. Yes.
I mean, look, I'll be the first one to say that, whether it's through my profession or think opportunities I've been given, or even opportunities I've earned, that comes with it a responsibility to help others. And I think lawyers, I do not love lawyer jokes. I'll repeat the best one, which I heard Justice Roberts say across the street at the Arts District Mansion 17 years ago. He said, I don't like to tell lawyer jokes in front of audiences of lawyers and non-lawyers, because the lawyers don't think they're funny and the non-lawyers don't think they're jokes. Okay.
Right. They think, yes.
Yeah, I think they're true. And I thought that was highly, from someone I really respect, was a really great tongue-in-cheek way to make a point. I don't like that, because I happen to think it's a noble profession. I think people, when they get in trouble, they trust their lawyer. They may make lawyer jokes, but boy, who do they call when they're in trouble? And I think it's a real responsibility to be a lawyer. And that is not just to seek business, get great results, generate a lot of revenue. Of course, that's important. That's part of the business of it. I get all that. But I think there are opportunities to serve, whether it's in charitable boards or civic things, or promoting others or creating opportunities for others. I really do believe that there are some systemic inequities in the legal profession that I noticed when I was. Tell me a
little bit about that, Paul. How so? Tell me.
Well, I mean, when I was an associate, a young associate in the 90s, I worked with several partners who were, objectively speaking, they were super young. They might have been in their late 30s or maybe in their 40s. They had young kids, and these were amazing women, but I was watching them have to do all this juggling, and there was zero support or consideration for anything about it. They were just expected to do everything, and that stuck with me. And look, oftentimes with them, I was the person in the office late at night when they were at the games, or on the weekends when they were at the games, or whatever. And this is before any technology. And that's just what you're supposed to do. And I think they appreciated that. I thought it was important that they were with their kids. And, fast forward how the worm turns, right? In 2000, 7, 8, 9, 10, I wake up and I'm a single dad with 2 little boys. And, there were people that, helped me as I was prioritizing that, of course. I say, of course to me. And, I really got a real upfront taste of what it's like. Not that I didn't have a ton of support or amazing mom, and I had, I wasn't suffering for certain things, but these were my boys and I was going to take care of them. I wanted to be the person to do that. I wanted to outsource as little as I possibly could, and made choices to that regard. So I really saw that, but I also really underscored for me that it's hard. It is. There's no easy answer. People oftentimes, are critical of parental leave applying to multiple parents, both parents, and all different. That's like, that's a crazy judgment. That's an area where we've actually evolved in a positive way. And does the fact that one person might, abuse it mean that we should, not give it credence for everyone else? Of course not. But I think that, I am very attracted to people who are first gen, because I think, oh my gosh, that grit is going to serve you so well at 9 o'clock at night when you don't know the answer and you're hungry and you're tired, because you have already, you didn't show up here with a built-in support system. You're creating your own. And I think that we have to make seats at the table for those, for people, different things. One of the best things I was told by a senior partner at my old firm was, we can't just hire our friends' kids. And to be fair, I do hire some of my friends' kids, but not because they're my friends' kids, but because they are amazing.
And they're qualified. They're good.
Of course, they're qualified, but they're amazing. They bring a richness to the table. And I think that we have to. But the point in that is to look beyond our own little insular comfort zones, and that could be based on gender. It could be based on background. It could be based on ethnicity or race or whatever. And I think as we look more broadly, we create it, and we shouldn't do it just because it's good business. I think too many people are doing it just because it's good business. I think we should actually do it because it makes us all better. And I do not believe that in doing it correctly or appropriately, we have to, nor should we, nor are we, watering things down. I think that's insulting.
Very insulting.
I actually think that there are more than enough amazingly qualified people to come sit at our tables. We just have to go. We just have to make the invitations.
I love that whole thing. We take a seat at the table. You belong at the table, because that, one of my questions I actually, and I'm going to go there now, is, there is an important aspect of leadership that's become more prevalent, which you're mentioning here, which is, how do leaders bring the inclusion, not only just people, whether it's ageism. I had a guest a couple of weeks ago that will completely talk about ageism, right? And just how we are handling those that are a lot older in the different industries, and why the seat at the table is very important for them as well, along with gender and race and culture, and whether you're a first generation immigrant, whatever the case may be, why that's important, and not just for good business. You just helped me understand this. It's because it makes us better. And I had another guest who I always say is the pioneer of he worked for PepsiCo for many, many years, and ended up becoming a HR, global executive for them, and did a lot of change. But back in the 70s and 80s, when they weren't discussing things like this, him and several executives across the nation at major Fortune firms really looked at inclusion, looked at equity and inclusion and that kind of thing. And I asked him, here he's retired, he's probably in his mid 70s, maybe going into early 80s. And I asked him, I said, what is the definition, and why is it important to have this inclusion and this diversity? And he says, the definition is creativity. He says, the definition of that is creativity. He says, because it brings the best product to the table. It's exactly what you just said, Paul.
It's a diversity of diversities. I believe it's a diversity of diversities, a richness, and it's not, look, we get in trouble individually, we get in trouble as a society, we get in trouble in admissions offices when we treat it as an Excel spreadsheet with a formula and quotas. Because you know what? No one wants that. People who are on on the receiving end, there's no benefit. It's not, it doesn't help. But there's a diversity of diversities, and it can be economic, it could be experience, it could be all the different categories.
Yes. I mean, we love to say the woman from New Jersey and the woman from LA, you've got diversity at the table.
Yes. And you know what? Being my joke that I say at my firm is that Dallas is the center of the universe. It's not a joke. It's a fact. Dallas is the center of the universe. But you really sometimes have to fight to get certain people to come here as young people who otherwise may go to the coasts. And I tell people, let's get this person doesn't naturally come here. Let's go get them.
Yes.
Because that's going to make us better.
Yes.
And nothing against LA or New York. Love both those places. But, let's that's one of the, look, the Dallas of today versus the Dallas of 40 years ago, it's a much richer city. And I'm not talking about wealth. It's just, it is coming a long way. I think I've mentioned the fact that my 19-year-old son spent the summer, the last month of the summer, working south of downtown Dallas, gives me great pride. And the fact that he said it was one of the best experiences of his life, and he made all these amazing friends that he otherwise would not have come in contact with.
Yes,
is the best. Is the best, and it is the best. And look, if that arises because it does arise because of a relationship that's incredibly valuable to me that I've had for 35 years with someone at that organization. But that's there's a difference between getting someone an address and then getting in the door, right?
So good. Yes, absolutely.
Yep. So,
yeah, there's something to say for that. And I'm going to end with one question, and we're going to wrap it up here. Tell me what you would have told yourself. What do you tell your, if you rewind the clock, what would you say to your, I usually 20-30, but for you, I'm going to do 30-40.
I would tell it's interesting. I would tell my 30-year-old self, which was a self that was not married and no kids, versus my 40-year-old self who was at that point also not married but 2 little boys. Those 2 people were very different people. That 40-year-old was a much had a couple kicks to the shin and was a much more developed person and had much look, I just think at the end of the day, once you are responsible for another human being, it's either going to crush you or it's going to make you your best self. And in my sense, I'm not saying my best self is amazing by any means, but my best self definitely correlates with being responsible for other people. And I see that. So what would I have told my 30-year-old self? I would have said, even when you're not responsible for someone else, live and think as though you are, might be one thing I'd say. And I view it not just being responsible for kids. I view it now equally being responsible for parents. And one of the greatest gifts ever was all 3 of my kids, but particularly my sons, watching when my dad was sick and the weeks and months, many months leading to when he passed away, where thank goodness his big brain was sharp, but his body was failing, that they would just say the same thing. They would just say, "You're a good son. Grandpa's lucky to have you. You're a good son." And you sit there, and I would joke and say, "Well, thank you. It's a nice thing to say. Please take care of me that way when I'm older." And because you have to say something like that, otherwise you're going to cry. And or sometimes I just say both. I do both. But you really think about, like, what's our purpose? Like, is our purpose, like, it's really important to me. Like, I do care about my job, and I care about my profession, and I care about all those professional things we talked about. But at the end of the day, that's not going to define me.
Yes.
That is not going to define me. When I look at my retirement years, I am not going to walk around and be spiking the football because of these cases I won. That's not what's going to define me.
No.
It may have fulfilled me to a degree, and it will fulfill me to a degree, and the building and the recruiting and the creating opportunities for other people, that's great. But, when you really look, it's the David Brooks thing of the difference between resume values and eulogy values. Resume values, what being the things you say about yourself, and eulogy values that people say about you.
Right.
I hope my eulogy values mention a lot more of, J, G, and L than they do of my law career.
My law career at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. So
That's right. Okay. One last question. What leaders have inspired you?
Oh gosh.
Just give me 1 or 2.
There's a teacher I had in high school that inspired me. And he didn't even know.
What teacher is that?
His name is John Beal, Beall. And he was only at my high school for about 5 or 6 or 7 years. And he got me in 10th grade, and I was questioning myself more than anything. And he got me to see, he saw things in me I certainly did not see in myself. And he was a great teacher. Then after the remaining 2 years of high school, he was a great mentor and a great friend. And then he went to New York and taught at the collegiate school for 30 years. And have stayed in some degree of touch with him, and I have used every opportunity to tell him how important he was to me. And then I'm going to tell you, this is why I thought of this.
Uh-huh.
I got a random email the other day.
Uh-huh.
And it was in my spam folder, and it was an advertisement for a book by John Beale. And I clicked on it, and I said, is this the same guy? And he had written a book on Ernest Hemingway and the art of his short story fiction work.
No way.
So he sent me straight to Amazon. I bought it.
Uh-huh.
And then I texted him.
Yes.
I just bought your book. This is awesome. I don't need anything else to read, but I'm going to read this. This looks awesome. And what a kick. I thought about, so in terms of he not only inspired me, I think, he's kind of got me at that inflection point where, I really probably really doubted myself. And where I went to school, when you got a sudden obstacle that I was at that point.
It's making me smile about, right.
It's a tough one. And he's not the most, there are no buildings named after him. There's no doubts.
None of that, right.
He's just, he is a wonderfully humble guy that made a huge impact on me.
Well, I love how we're ending with that. That was special. That was special. I always love when it's a teacher.
Yes.
That is someone that inspired you, a leader that inspired you. That's for me as well. So
that's how they get compensated. I think they get compensated by those texts and those visits and all that. Yeah,
that's true. That's how they truly get compensated, isn't it?
Yep, I think so.
Well, Paul, I can't thank you enough.